Let's get straight into the newspapers now with Nigel Nelson, GB News' senior political commentator. He's also the former political editor of the Sunday People and the Sunday Mirror. Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning,
Lovely to see you. Let's talk about the Red Sea standoff then. We've got the Sunday Telegraph. Lord Cameron's written for the newspaper. We've sent an unambiguous message to the Houthis. Your attacks have to stop. He seems to be threatening further action, Nigel.
I think it's explicit. He's saying that if they don't stop, that he certainly will. That we certainly will authorise further action. President Biden said the same thing. So really, the ball is now in the Houthis' court. If they stop, then we stop. If they don't, then these attacks are going to carry on.
But it is divisive, isn't it? We've seen a number of Labour MPs, including Jeremy Corbyn, of course, disagree with the taking of this military action. Sunday Telegraph, page 5, pro-Palestinian marchers back Houthi rebels. Now, I find this quite unbelievable. Got people over here living with the freedoms of the Western world, living in London, enjoying life in a democracy, supporting Houthi rebels. Do these people understand who the Houthis are? Perhaps you can explain for us, Nigel, whether these people are progressive free thinkers, because I don't think they are.
No, I don't think they're sort of Liberal Democrats or anything like that.
No.
They're a 20,000-strong Shia militia. That's the fighting side of it. They seem to have quite a bit of support in Yemen. But the kind of ideology that they support is that sort of espoused by ISIS, by Hamas. So they're not sort of very cuddly. However, they're not a prescribed terrorist organisation in this country.
Should they be?
Well, I mean, I would imagine that we'll be looking at that from now in the future, but they're not at the moment. So, of course, if the protesters are actually backing the Houthis, they won't face arrest in the same way they would have done if they'd backed Hamas.
How does Kier Starmer handle this one? Asking you with your former sort of Mirror and People hat on, Nigel, because he said in the past that he wouldn't support any military action without a parliamentary vote. Obviously, there wasn't one this week. The Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, was consulted, and he did say that he would happily recall Parliament if necessary. That hasn't happened. The Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, said it was ludicrous for the likes of Corbyn and others to call for a parliamentary vote or discussion in advance of the attacks, because, of course, that would warn the Houthis that they were coming. Where do you think Kier Starmer lies in this debate? How does he play it to keep both sides of the Labour Party happy?
Well, first of all, I think the Houthis knew we were coming because we kept saying so if they didn't stop attacking ships. As far as the Labour Party is concerned, and what Kier Starmer has said is he's perfectly happy for going to war on the basis of the royal prerogative, which means that Parliament doesn't have to be consulted about it. The problem, I think, and I think this is for the left, is that the convention about consulting Parliament is all over the place. So there was a vote in Parliament for invading Iraq in 2003, no vote for sending troops to Helmand in 2006, vote on Syria, on bombing Syria in 2013, which the government lost and therefore didn't go ahead with it. And then we bombed Syria in 2018 without a vote. So at the moment, the one thing I think they've got to do is actually work out what this convention should be. My own view is that there should be a vote in Parliament if there is likely to be a significant loss of British lives. Sending 4 planes to bomb 2 targets probably doesn't qualify for that.
Yeah. Also, I'll be asking James Cartledge, the Defence Minister, later on the show, whether we have got the military capabilities for this, because obviously there's been concerns about the staffing of our frigates and support vessels in the Red Sea. Let's move on to the next biggest story in the papers. It's still running and running, isn't it, Nigel? We're calling it a first-class crisis, the post office scandal. The Express front page, Minister, jail post office bullies. This is coming from Kevin Hollingrake. There's also been a call from Sir David Davis that some of those implicated in the post office scandal should actually face criminal charges themselves. What do you think of that, Nigel?
Well, I mean, this is the Post Office Minister who's making that point. David Davis sort of flashes it out by saying what you could charge them with is perverting the course of justice, which would look like a way to actually get them into court. My own view is that I think we wait till the end of the public inquiry.
Yes.
It should report by towards the end of this year. I think you need to see the evidence there. There's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction going on. People are understandably absolutely furious now they've realised the full scandal of the Post Office. But at the moment, not to actually go gung-ho and try and take people's bonuses away and put them in jail or things like that. The answer is see what the public inquiry comes up with. Prosecutions may well follow.
Although there are yet more revelations this morning. There's a story about having Tony Blair having signed off Horizon, even though there were concerns about Fujitsu and that IT programme actually worked, that it might have had bugs in the system. He signed it off, apparently suggesting that if he didn't, there would be problems with relations with Japan. Meanwhile, we also hear from the Times, the Sunday Times, the front page headline reads, Venables given CBE despite Horizon fears. So this is Theresa May apparently waving through this honour, even though some said, actually, is this the right thing to do when we've got this scandal ongoing?
Well, it was actually the Honours Committee at the time who waved it through, and they're the ones who would face the criticism, and they were warned about it. There was somebody on the Honours Committee who was not happy about the honour being given. There are no clean hands in this. Yeah, as you say, you've mentioned Tony Blair. He was Prime Minister when the Horizon system was introduced, knowing that there were things wrong with it, that a lot of postmasters, even at that stage back in 1999, were saying, look, this is not working properly. So if you look all the way through, there are a number of ministers, prime ministers, all who've had their hands on it. Theresa May becomes the latest one. So I think it's very difficult to... this goes back to what I was saying about let's not have a witch hunt, let's not scapegoat too early till we actually know who is responsible.
The other big story of this week is going to be Rwanda. Obviously, we've had this tragic news of four people having been killed trying to cross the channel in the early hours of this morning, Nigel. We've got a joint opinion piece written by Danny Kruger, John Hayes and Mark Francois saying why the bill fails to give ministers the powers needed to stop the boats. On the other side of the argument, we've got the One Nation group saying that they won't continue to vote for it if it is amended, if it is toughened up. So Rishi Sunak's got a headache on his hands this week, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's an absolute nightmare. I mean, all it takes is 30 MPs from 30 Tory MPs, and this bill will fall. Now, we've got the capos of 3 of the 5 families who are writing...
There are these mafia references. We asked Mark Francois this before Christmas, whether he was some kind of mafia don. Seemed to be enjoying that label.
He seems to be enjoying the whole thing when you see him walking around the House of Commons at the moment. What they're saying is the bill needs to be tightened up. They're saying that these Rule 39 pyjama injunctions that stop the flights at the last minute, that needs to be dealt with. I mean, Rishi Sunak says he would ignore one of those. They want something a bit harder than that. Also, they want to try and stop individual appeals. Now, all of this, then, we nudge closer and closer to breaking international law. The One Nation group, which is a much bigger group, more than 100 MPs in the Tory party, are saying, no, we don't want that. This bill goes as far as it can possibly go. We'll vote for it, provided it's not amended. My guess is next week that the Tories will think, do we really want to bring down our government at the moment? Because a vote of no confidence would certainly follow if the bill disappeared, and probably the bill will go through as stands.
I mean, it's difficult for some Tories who might be facing electoral wipeout. There's been some polling conducted over the weekend which says that 9 in 10 constituents are concerned about immigration, not just illegal but also legal. The headline in the Mail's quite stark. Rishi's Rwanda plan will be ripped to pieces. Interestingly, Glenn Owen of the Mail on Sunday, he went out to Ukraine with Rishi Sunak over the weekend, and he got an interview with the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister is basically saying, no, the bill does what it does say. It does what it says on the tin. It's going to be OK. It's going to stop these legal challenges. Do you believe him, Nigel?
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, personally, I think Rwanda is a complete gimmick and certainly should never have been introduced in the first place.
But it should act as a deterrent, not least with news of these 4 deaths in the Channel.
Well, I don't think That's the point. There is no evidence at all it will act as a deterrent. I mean, the senior official at the Home Office wouldn't even sign it off as value for money because there was no evidence that it would have a deterrent value. But we've come further than that. I mean, the issue now is whether or not, as constructed by Rishi Sunak, this bill gets through.
I think we're going to witness a resurgence of Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick in the week, so we'll stay tuned.
We're going to hear lots of them this coming week, I would imagine.
Indeed so. And let's just finally have a look at some of the royal revelations that are in the Mail on Sunday. So Robert Hardman, who, funnily enough, is coming on my show next week to discuss this book. And it's a great book. I mean, sometimes we have royal books, they don't come up with much, they're a cut's job, we've heard it all before. What Robert Hardman done is pieced together the final days and hours of the Queen's life. And he speaks to the fact that it was discussed at one point, the idea of perhaps appointing Prince Charles, as he was then known, as a Prince Regent, should the Queen's health become so failing that she wasn't able to reign. This presumably is a reflection, Nigel, of the fact that the late Queen would never have abdicated. Abdication was a dirty word in her vocabulary, following the behaviour of Edward VIII, who I think she blamed for her own father, George VI's premature death. But it's quite an interesting insight, that, isn't it?
It is. It would have been the first time that we'd had a regent since 1820, when George III, I think the modern term would be, had some mental issues, and his son took over as regent. By the sound of Robert Hardman's book, that Prince Charles at the time was not terribly keen on the role. He wanted to see the Queen go all the way through.
Indeed. So I'll be looking forward to speaking to Robert Hardman next week. And I've very much enjoyed speaking to you this morning, Nigel. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.